Hello, everybody. It's just in case from American Newscape rejoining our friend Scott Dudley for American Consciousness. Hello, Scott. Welcome back to American Newscape.
Last week before I did the show, I was your cousin, and now I'm your friend. That
Well,
sounds like a downgrade.
no. Well, I don't think a lot of people are excited to be my relatives, but it might have been a promotion.
Well, now that the holidays are over, I was trying to like bum my way onto your gift list, and I guess
No, absolutely. You can get you. I want you on there, Scott. I really do.
we'll aim for that. Okay, I'll
Okay.
I'll continue to try to
Aspire.
push those right.
You
Yeah,
aspire.
yeah, absolutely, absolutely. I'll make that the resolution that I give up in 2 weeks, right?
There you go. There you go. Well, I noticed there's been no Turkish coffee coming my way, but that I forgive you.
You know what?
Yeah. Okay. Good.
I'm really getting you. I'm really getting used to these Fridays with Turkish coffee.
As we all should be.
So the dog park's open again. And one of the things that we have is a kind of a mutual support network, if you will. And I'll give you an example. I don't know if I want to say this out loud. My instrument panel on my car, my 23-year-old car, gave out like 10 weeks ago, and I've been really good at driving without gauges. I already knew how fast it was and stuff like that, so that's not really an issue. The gas gauge, I knew how many days I could go, and I thought I'd go 2 days extra. That didn't work. So I ran out of gas, and I'm sitting there with my wife late for work and two dogs in the car ready to go to the dog park, and I'm on a highway, and I'm like, well, okay, this is kind of a messed up situation. I texted one of the people at the dog park. They were like, "Hey, I'm already driving to the dog park. I just saw you. I'll drive by. We'll pick you up." So the first time in my life, I never had to walk to get gas when I ran out of gas. So
Wow.
in 20 minutes, the whole situation was resolved.
Well, no. I'm sure your wife's been mentioning it to you ever since.
I get the occasional, "Have you gotten gas yet?"
Yeah.
I actually cut the days back, so now I'm on an 8-day rotation, and I've been like a half tank, so I've been really good. I guess the point is that like the other day, somebody had like one of those do-it-yourself homemade spas, and they wanted spa moved, and they said, "Hey, are you any good at this stuff?" Or it was like somebody else needed some electrical stuff done, and they were like, "Hey, does anybody here know electricity?" And so at the dog park, what we do, we whenever we can, we cover for each other. So yeah, I know something about that. I can help you out with it. And sometimes I say, you know what? I've done stuff like that for my own house, but I don't really have the professional capacity to stand behind my work. And if you want stuff done at that level, you're probably better off getting a professional person to do it.
Well, yeah, for liability purposes, if anything. And okay, so there you are at the dog park, sharing skills and supporting each other. Sounds like a remarkable community. Sounds like a co-op, dog park co-op.
Well, and then of course the elders in the group, we're quick to pounce on the deficits of youth, if we will.
Well,
And so we're like, isn't it kind of scary that so many people, younger than us, because we're old, we've got it all together, obviously, um, don't have the kind of the basic prerequisite skills to live out on the to to be one of those homesteading pioneers. You know, I'll give you an example. My dad's dad, my grandfather, he was an ad executive. So he's that that TV show about the ad executives in the 1940s and 50s. That was him. That's what he did. He built his own barn. He would load all his own ammo. So he would go in and everything, all of his shotgun shells and all of his the rifle casings for the deer, all that stuff. He had like a loader and he would do all that stuff. And that was really common amongst that generation. It's like he wasn't like an outlier. It's like all the old dudes knew how to do, when I was growing up, all the old dudes knew how to do like motor repair and build things from scratch, like set up the code. And so somehow, some way, we kind of have moved away from that. And the question I think is that going to be problematic at some point?
Well, certainly because those skills are still required, and those people are slowly fading away. And you're right that those generations had those skills, and you and I had Chilton's manuals to fix our own cars, and
I I kept the Chilton's manual for my Pinto. I still have it.
cool, cool. And today's generations don't understand that. I think society, they buy new and they trade it in as soon as they can, and they're saddling themselves with those payments every month. But there's one less thing they have to worry about.
Yeah, it's interesting how a lot of the stuff is kind of pointed towards convenience, right?
Hmm.
It's like people don't even have to go shopping anymore. They can just like tell a computer, tell their phone, open the app, tell the phone, say, I want this, and somebody getting paid minimum wage at one of the larger chain stores is going to go around and with one of those giant carts that blocks my traffic when I'm trying to get through and grab the last thingamajig that I need right before I get there, and pack it up and somebody else to their house. They're talking about drones delivering stuff now. It's like the whole kind of getting your head around that for probably for people my age is, and a lot of people my age actually use those services.
Well, yeah, I do, and it's a wonderful service, and I would have used it 20 years ago if it was available because it's a time saver. Now I cut my own hair because it's a time saver. But what created that? The pandemic.
That it really pushed us more and more towards that. But what are we saving time for? I mean, okay, so it takes me 5 hours to reroute an electrical circuit that it would probably take an electrician 20 minutes to do. But at the end of the day, it's like I've got that skill. If
Right.
something electrical goofs up in my house, I don't even really need YouTube. I've got the proper tools, I've got the time, and I can do it. And that means, so hey, if you're listening right now, circle this, because if the apocalypse ever hits, this is going to be useful kind of background information in terms of oh, I need to survive now. A lot of the things I took for granted as being available are no longer available.
Right. And
The pandemic did that. That was a version.
well, and in reality, the electricity won't be working, and the old souls who do have those skills will be writing you directions in cursive, and you're not going to be able to read it.
I'll be riding my little electrical generating bicycle so I can look on my phone. So I can look on my phone.
So we can do this podcast that nobody can watch.
Right. Well, and yeah, YouTube will be. I'm sorry, our servers are down due to the apocalypse.
There you go. There you go. But it's frightening, and yeah, a lot of those skills were survival skills, and they were, if they weren't taught to us by our parents, they were taught to us by our grandparents, and they're skills that, if you understand your family tree, were handed down for hundreds of years.
And it's not just I'm just kind of talking into kind of guy stuff like electricity or construction and stuff. But what about healthcare? Did your
Right.
mom run you to the doctor every time something happened?
No, no, not at all. Not at all. And what about making your own clothes? What about cooking your own food? What about growing your own garden? There's just lots of skills that can be adapted or adopted as hobbies that'll actually put you in a good place.
Yeah, I think that that's an important point, and any one of those skills could come in handy, but they also could become critical at some point.
No, absolutely. I mean, if we imagine a world without electricity, without the internet, being able to share skills with other survivors is going to be handy. It's going to be a barter. Now we're going to talk about barter to live.
Well, and I think everybody's kind of waiting for like that, like the bell to ring, and it's round one of the apocalypse. But and to reality is a lot with the cost of living the way it is, and just the cost of housing the way it is. You know, if you know how to do a good butterfly bandage, you could save yourself $400 of healthcare costs. It's you don't all you don't always have to you don't always need professional level healthcare if you're good at the lower level stuff, if you know what you're doing and you're careful. That's
Well,
not recommendations. That don't even begin to pin that on me, okay?
no, we're not. No recommendations, but it's just
I drank
perspectives,
mercurochrome as a child, okay? It was preventative.
and that's why you have that beautiful hue, right,
That's dog park.
Dogberg?
Yeah,
Dogberg.
it's 2 hours of sun every day.
Well, yeah, it's just perplexing. How do we encourage younger people to start to take an interest in some of these things? Because you're right, it's all there now. I mean, anything you want to learn is available on the internet.
I'm a dude, right? So and I'm a dude. I mean, I'm rough and tumble. I was free safety in football,
Okay.
so I was tough. Yeah, I was always running into people bigger than me. Um, but that being said, I knew how to crochet. I knew how to knit. I knew how to sew on a machine and manually. And I still kind of do. I'm not like super sharp on it, but I could probably get back to it. But I knew all those things because the people who taught me those things did those things out of necessity.
Right. 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 I was taught to cook when I was 7. I was taught to do my laundry when I was 8. Those were all defense mechanisms to not be
Yep, yep.
helpless when I became an adult.
Yeah, you know what? And I want to thank my mom for that because when I was on the rotation, we had my sister and I and my mom in the house. And so every third week I had to do the family laundry. And I had to do it correctly because I wasn't just doing my own laundry. And I always, at the time, I was like, but I'm the only one mowing the lawn. Why is this? How is this fair?
Well,
But after a while, I was like, well, you know what? This is useful because now I know how to do it.
yeah, but to be fair, your mom could have mowed the lawn. She'd had no problem mowing the lawn.
Well, she said, I'm the one with a full time job and you don't have that. So I was like, Mom, I'm going to school. Doesn't that count? And she's like, no.
Well, you'd have done well growing up in my family because when I got home from kindergarten, I said, I don't want to go back. I don't want to go to school. My mom said, that's your job. You're going to
Yeah,
school.
I tried that. I tried. It didn't get me out of mowing the lawn.
Oh, yeah, exactly. Exactly. And now you have that skill. Do you mow the lawn now?
I do with a push mower. Still, I started on a push mower, and my mom's house had a huge yard, and I was like 7 years old, and it's taking 3.5 hours to push mow the darn yard. I complained enough to get a gas mower there, but when I got here, I had a much smaller yard, and I was like, for $60 I can get a push mower, and I actually know how to sharpen the blades and tune it because if you didn't know that, your mower after one season, your mower didn't work very well. So yeah,
Uh,
I'm a push mower guy.
So you never traded in your gas polluting mower for those free electric mowers that the utility company was taking those gas mowers in trade in.
My mother-in-law had one, and when she moved in, I used it. I used it a few times, and part of it was I felt like Mick Jagger with a microphone cord, having to kind of always organize it so I wasn't running over it. and
Okay.
um and that was kind of a drag, but then it required maintenance and stuff too. Those don't last forever either.
Well,
And
I
at
don't.
that point I was like, I'm just gonna move on.
Well, our rechargeable mower is lasting forever. Parts are breaking, but those parts are pretty simple to replace, and you have to buy new batteries every once in a while. But it always starts.
You know, this is a confession. I'm one of those people who somehow believes that having your bare feet in the ground is good for you and the ground. And one of the cool things about the push mower is I can I can mow the lawn barefoot. And I never trusted the gas and electric ones enough to do that. But the push mower, yeah,
You were
we're
in
good.
control. You were in control.
If I'm not pushing it, it's not turning.
There you go. There you go. Well, okay. So what are we going to do? What are we going to? It sounds like the burden is on us to inspire others to start developing skills.
I think maybe the impetus is on growth. So,
Okay.
everybody's always kind of looking to how can I develop? What can I add to my arsenal as a human being? And what things do I add that probably benefit me more than other things? You were talking about cooking. My mom got when I was 4 years old. My mom got me like a little kids Betty Crocker for Kids cookbook or whatever it was, and and then by the time I was 7 or 8, she was a single parent and going to school and working full time, and that book came in darn handy. And because I learned how to cook, and I learned what I liked, and figured out what I liked to cook, and and that was a life skill that I then appreciated and continued to build on. When I married into this family, one of the first things I realized was that my mother-in-law was a fantastic cook of all things Mexican, and I looked over her shoulder, and then one day I said, "Hey, how do you do that? Can you teach me a little bit?" And she taught me everything because nobody else wanted to learn.
Right.
And she was like, she kind of knew that she was like going to be like a dead skill, so she taught me everything. And I can make virtually any Mexican food. A lot of it's extraordinarily hard work. There's just so many things you have to do to make chili rellenos,
Well,
and but I can do it.
it's not hard work. It's just detailed, meticulous work.
Yeah, by hard I don't mean like you're going to be sweating and sore at the end of the thing.
Right.
I mean you've got to be as you said, meticulous.
Yeah,
If
meticulous.
if you don't if you don't do the step correctly, the step it doesn't turn out.
I've been cooking for so long that I've developed recipes that I've substituted, and all those substitutions as I've gotten longer in the tooth are to make it easier, to make it faster, to not give up the flavor. And but I would hazard a guess that most high school students couldn't read a recipe.
Oh,
It,
that's true. You need to know measurements and all that stuff too, as well, right?
well, right, and characters you're not used to seeing on your phone, your cell phone, that aren't being taught to you. But and that was taught to us in grade school. I mean, we had to take. I want to. Even as boys, we had to take a few weeks of home. What was it? Home ec,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
the girls had to take a few weeks of shop. Basic
Yeah.
woodworking, basic metalworking, basic electrical.
And nowadays, if you said how many cups in a quart, people would look at you and what's a quart?
Well, and I don't think there are shop classes, and I don't think there are home ec classes anymore in school. I might be wrong. We're seeing a lot of younger human beings are into 4-H and future farmers, and those skills are abundant and taught in those programs. And I would assume
Where those programs exist, right? I mean, we're in a rural community, so we're kind of blessed. Most of our schools locally have FFA programs.
right, 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 and we all have neighbors that have those skills, so you wouldn't have to look very hard.
Yeah, no, I believe that that's true. I'll give you an example. I was a rental guy. I lived in rentals as a young adult almost all the time. And what I would do is I would barter rent for upgrading the rental.
Okay.
I'll refinish your floors. I'll redo your carpeting. I'll fix your cupboards or whatever else there was to do. And I was always, and that was kind of a neat way to be able to stay in better places than probably I could afford just by offering kind of work in exchange, upgrading their apartment in exchange for paying less rent.
Well, it makes perfect sense, and you had developed those skills.
Mm. No, I actually developed them goofing around in the rentals,
Well,
for better or worse.
well, yeah, but that was part of our character. When I first started fixing my car at 16, I didn't know anything about it. I had my Chilton's manual, and it was trial by error.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. Because when I was 16, or yeah, I think I got my first car on my 18th birthday, but I didn't have any money,
Right. Gas was
and
very, yeah, you had to buy gas.
the car itself cost $80,
Yeah.
and it broke me. Right, that was all. That was it. I didn't have any more money. And yeah, you had to figure out how to do your own tune-ups, your own oil changes, your own, replacing parts when you needed to replace a part.
Well, and, we were not gifted with cars as children by our parents.
No,
We bought our own, paid for our own insurance, paid for our own gasoline, paid for our own maintenance. And it's not that our parents couldn't have helped us, but I'm grateful that they didn't.
I'm grateful for the motorhead friends I had
Hmm.
who were able to kind of sit down with me and say, okay, sounds like this is what's going on. Here's what we need to do. And they would kind of mentor me through the process. And then, once you learn how to do something, the next time it's a lot easier.
Well, even today, if I'm not sure what's going on, I go to AutoZone, and if they can't explain it to me correctly, they'll come out and pop my hood for me and show me what I need to do. So it's out there, it's available.
Yeah. Yeah. I settled into a small business mechanic about 30 years ago. And they've actually now retired, but the place kept its vibe. And so it's still one of those places where you can go in and they'll be accurate and they'll be fair and they won't charge you too much and they'll fix the problem and they won't identify other problems. And your car won't magically break 2 weeks after you've got it out of the shop with something else.
Right. Yeah, good point. And they won't fix your gauges and the electricity
I,
of.
so I was going to take it to them and do that because it's not that hard a problem to fix. You have to pull the gauges, you have to pull the dashboard, pull the gauges, and replace them with a working one. And you will get one of those in a used car, in a junkyard, and it's really not that expensive. Um, but then I started wondering, is anything bad going to happen?
If you can read your
And
gauges.
and nothing, right? So, well, RPM, speed, I already know. I've been driving the car for 25 years. I know what the car does and doesn't do. I know what 35 miles an hour is. I know what gear it is. I know what the RPM sounds like. So nothing bad happened, and because nothing bad happened, I kind of just slacked.
Well, you've been enjoying the adventure of not having gauges, I assume, or you'd have gotten it taken
Well, and
care
it
of.
was a little bit, and it was a little bit of a challenge, right?
Yeah.
Because you don't have a temperature gauge anymore, so you probably should stay aware of whether your car's running hot.
Well, exactly. But, I think everybody has to have a semblance of knowledge about their cars or they'll be taken advantage of by maintenance shops.
Oh, absolutely.
And we all need to have a semblance of understanding to find a good mechanic to work with.
And you suggested this a couple of shows ago, and it was a really good point. I'm going to circle back to it. It's not just that they they may do they may fix this, but not that. So they may pop on your tires because you've got a. But if it was an alignment problem, they may not identify that or point you in the right direction or fix it.
Well, I remember years ago, a good friend of mine owned a four-wheel drive shop, full maintenance on vehicles, and he worked on my cars and trucks. And I was in there one day, and a guy came in and paid his bill, and he left, and the owner of the shop and the friend of mine said, "I wonder why he didn't want me to adjust his clutch." I go, "What?" He goes, he he needed his clutch adjusted, but he came in here and wanted a new clutch. I said, so you put in a new clutch? He said, oh, absolutely. Because if I hadn't of, he wouldn't have felt that his vehicle was fixed.
Nice. I can appreciate that logic.
Well, and there's a lot of truth to that. And, that mechanic had a lot of integrity, but he'd replaced clutches in that truck like 3 times for the customer. And the customer's problem is he didn't know how to drive a clutch very well, and that's how he kept throwing it out of adjustment. And
Love blowing up his car.
well, it just needed to be adjusted. Each time needed to be adjusted. So, walking into a mechanic and acting like you know what the problem is, that can be a mistake.
Yeah. Yeah. You really, and so you're really looking for people that demonstrate trust over time. And that's why self-reliance becomes kind of one of those things where, when you can deal with it yourself, maybe it's better because you don't have to work with that trust factor floating around.
But I think it's a testament to trust. We need to be able to trust. We need to
Oh,
because we do need to rely on others, not just ourselves.
and I love people who are really good at stuff. When I've been like 6 hours into a plumbing problem and I'm finally like, I don't know. And or I break something else trying to fix the problem, which happens. And I call up an expert, I call flush your troubles down the drain, you know, and and they come in and in 20, 30 minutes, it's like not only is it fixed, it's better than brand new. And I appreciate people who are really good at what they do. And they just come in and everything's just like bada bing, bada boom.
Well, I learned not to plumb because it's a delicate skill. You can't be hitting other pipes with wrenches because by the time you fix the problem, after you've banged into all the other pipes, you're going to have 6 problems when you get done and turn the water back on.
Oh yeah, 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 yeah.
Now,
Running out the door, going, "Honey, I'll be right back. I have to go to the back of the house and turn off the water main quickly."
well, and my wife had rentals, so she can fix just about anything. Skill
That'll do it.
skills I
Talk
have
about self reliance.
right. So skills I never developed. She might stand over me and tell me what I need to do, and I listen to her because she actually knows what she's talking about.
Yeah, yeah. It's interesting because there are so many ways that we can develop ourselves, and these seem like backward ways almost. I mean, think of how good people are at using their devices now. These things that we use to cut shows and answer phones and talk to our imaginary robot friends on social media. You know, some people are so adept at that. I can remember with my children, when my oldest was in high school, it's like he was gaming and he had his phone in his hand, but he was on his PC, which he built himself, by the way. He built these super turbocharged PCs, of which I still have a couple of them. But he was on his phone at the same time. I said, well, what are you doing? He said, I'm texting. Well, you're not even looking at your phone. How can you text? And he says, well, Dad, you don't have to look at your phone. You just have to know what you're doing. And and I said, well, how fast are you texting? Well, about 90 words a minute. And I'm like, oh.
Yeah.
And just my brain is just like blowing up because I can't imagine having that mental capability or skill set. So there's a whole new area of developing self-reliance. And when I have to set up a brand new TV set, I'm not very self-reliant.
You don't have the patience because you never wanted those skills.
Well, I it was never put out. I was never properly mentored. I think all the skills that I developed, somebody came along and said, "Hey, Scotty, let me help you with that," and or let me show you, or hey, you know what, you could fix this, it'd be better, and here's what you could do.
Well, a testament to us is we understand what we don't know, and I don't. Both of us are. Uh, we invite that kind of help.
I mean, Jim at the dog park. And when I mentioned that the instrument panel was out in the car, he was like, he gave me like 6 or 7 steps to deal with it, and he said, "Well, here's what you need to do." And so I honestly, if I wanted to be self reliant in that respect, I think I probably could. But some things I kind of trust to grown-ups. You know what I mean?
Well, a client of mine who is a, transmission mechanic in this area, and he's acclaimed, world acclaimed. I had bought a car and I was driving it, and all of a sudden it wouldn't go into gear. And I said,
Mm-hmm.
well, what's that all about? So I'm sitting at a gas station 180 miles away. I called him and I said, he goes, oh, yeah. He goes, you're going to have to, uh, what did I have to do? The car was defending. This is why these smart cars are so wonderful. It was trying to tell me that the brake lights were out. And that
Oh, so it was like putting you on pause.
it was putting me on pause. And he said that. He said your brake lights are out. He said it's an easy fix. This is how you get it going. And I did. I got it going. And I took it in. And I thought, oh my gosh, what am I in for? He walked out with a little simple relay, put it in there. He fixed it within 2 minutes. But
Yeah,
see,
I was
that was his
reading the
gift.
other day that some cars have uh, some of the more newer cars have auto locks. So when the car doesn't have power, the doors lock and they won't open even from the inside. And I'm like, yeah, no, that doesn't sound like that sounds like an adventure,
It sounds like I need to keep a hammer in my new car.
or yeah, or something.
Yeah, yeah. Well, what? When was it we heard 20 years ago that cars were just all of a sudden stopping because payments were due the dealers? With OnStar, they could actually take control of your car and turn it off.
Oh, yes, yes, yeah. And
And
the repo men were probably like, yeah, just shut them down. I'll go get it.
yeah, no, exactly. But it was something that Big Brother in the auto industry thought they needed.
Yeah, so much for self reliance. First step of self reliance is keep your bills paid.
Okay, well, absolutely. So, Scott, what skills are you trying to develop so you'll be more self-reliant?
I'm really focusing on because I foresee a day, if I survive long enough, that I won't be able to get around by car. And because I've seen it happen to like every old person who lived long enough that I know. They were still alive, but they couldn't drive anymore. And so I'm looking at that, and I'm developing kind of a plan and the abilities to access stuff. So some of that may be online ordering, and some of that may be, if I really am working hard to retain the ability to be ambulatory. I am longingly, lustfully looking at bicycles with big saddle packages and large carrying capacities.
Well, that'll be good, but if you don't have the skill set to drive a vehicle, you probably are not going to have the skill set to drive that fancy bike. Of course, they do make three-wheel bikes. So we actually
They did.
revert back to tricycles.
That's exactly what I'm looking at. The ones with the two wheels in the back and the big old, put your groceries in the back of the bike.
There you go. There you go. Well, that's a plan. That's something to aspire to, even if you never are able to obtain that goal.
If I got realistic counsel, I think they would say that I actually do need to up my game in terms of interacting with electronics. And that's something I'm still kind of really stubborn about and reluctant about. It's like I want to be able to kind of be Neolithic at the end of my, make it through this generation Neolithic. Don't
Yeah, but you cheat on that. So, when you need a skill, electronic skill, you develop it.
I do, and
It's
for me, part of that's the stubbornness thing that we've talked
right.
about. It's like it's really hard for me to call up my kids and say, "Hey, how do I turn this on?"
Well, at least your children aren't saying, "Why don't you know?"
Well, that I think they would.
but they don't see the.
If they didn't say it, they'd be thinking it.
Well, of course, they don't see the point in saying it. I mean, some things just don't need to be said. But okay, so you have a goal, and you're working on skills and developing skills, and I think everybody should aspire to something, and everybody should be. I still work on professional skills all the time. Skills that I should have, or be more proficient at, and I enjoy that, as you do. You enjoy it. You enjoy writing books, and you enjoy sharing knowledge.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. And one of the things now that I've got more time is I actually, you don't always have to be self-reliant in practical ways. So I'm ready to start picking up my guitar again.
Well, there you
And I
go.
don't know that much will become of that because I was always felt like I was had some limitations there.
Well, there again, I think that as I did, I always wanted to play the guitar, but never set myself up with the right guitar, never set myself up with the right strings, and certainly had the musical aptitude for it. But Scott, I have friends that put on national classes and travel the country giving guitar lessons. I mean, you could actually hook up with one of those people and get in a I want to learn guitar community.
Yeah, the thing about that's always kind of held me back and from pushing it is every guitar player I've ever seen and every good piano player I've ever seen have like these really elegant hands, like tapered fingers, and I've got like stone crushing hands.
Well,
My hands are really really strong, and I can do amazing things. I can grab really hot things with them, but when it comes to kind of getting those B chords down, I was like,
well, yeah, but there's cheats. There's cheats and all that stuff, and
oh yeah, yeah.
um, you know, the adventure is in learning that skill and accomplishing more on the guitar. You're not you're not learning guitar, getting back to the guitar to play at Carnegie Hall. You're getting back at it as a challenge and self fulfillment.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. And ultimately, I would do a coffee house gig with a couple of people, maybe, like a 2 or 3 person coffee house type band. Do some Simon and Garfunkel.
Well, maybe you should think about CD bars where the clientele might be a little in the bag, so to speak, or maybe behind chicken wire.
That would be Dr. Hook and the Medicine Show.
Since I was in college bands, we would show up and play at, like, well, I'll mention a restaurant that had stages back in the day, with like Black Angus Restaurant. They had stages, and they would bring us in there, and we would play and entertain a crowd, and they would feed us alcohol and appetizers, and we would bring a crowd in there, and they were thrilled. And it was fulfilling, but we weren't playing in Grady Gamage or in Carnegie Hall. We were just having a good time. And there's a lot of garage bands. Your old employer had a band and played at events, and there were a lot of good musicians in that group, and there were a lot of very
And then there was
fair.
me, and then there was
Well,
me.
yeah. No, no, Scott, you played a mean stick, and I always noticed that. Scott, you play a mean stick.
Yeah, no, I pride myself on the ability to do harmonies by ear, but in terms of anything else, that was about it.
Well, no, but it was fulfilling. I mean, it was fulfilling and it was gratifying, and other people enjoyed what you were doing. Isn't that what life's all about, kind of, at times?
Yeah, it was interesting because I'd never really been a part of a group of guys doing something. It's like I've always been a lone wolf kind of guy, and I think it was part of it was like guys get together and do guy stuff all the time. Maybe there's something in that for me, and I think that's when I started doing it. I think that's really what was my motivation. I like music, I like singing, I like performing in some regards, but really I think it was, can I hang out with a bunch of guys and is that somehow gratifying to me? And I think after a few years it was like I really learned that no, this is not really something I like to do because it never becomes like a group of equal partners. There's always with guys. There's always this alpha thing. There's always who's the boss, and then there's usually two or three people who think they're the boss, and you got to deal with their tension going on, and after a while, it just got tiring. It's like okay,
I used to arrange for groups at an event, and one of my favorite groups was like a who's who of our county, and the lead guitar player was a Superior Court judge. And I
nice.
knew him, and he was very serious. Had a lot of respect for him. He was a very serious human being. And one day I was watching them play, and I noticed that he had five guitars on the stage. So not only was he a hobbyist, not professional musician, he had to go on stage with five guitars. So I started calling him Billy Five Guitars.
Now, were you guys close enough that you would get charges dismissed, or was there a boundary there?
Well, I was always confused because, I was certainly not of his society, but he always went out of his way, trampled children to say hello to me. And
Nice.
so I always went out of my way to respect him because I did respect him because he was a remarkable judge. Not all of them are, but he would never dismiss me from his jury.
Nice. Or the charges against you.
Well, and I don't think I would, if there were charges against me, I don't think I would have wanted to come before him because I think the sentence might have been a little rougher.
You'd have been at the table going, "Hey, could you recuse?
Yeah, exactly.
You know me."
Well, a lot of people, we are in a small area where most of the people that are called for jury duty are border patrol agents, FBI agents, police officers, and they're all
Yeah.
excused because so when it's all said and done, there's not very few of us that are left in the room to go on the jury. And I remember using every defense I knew. I was a libertarian. I didn't believe in victimless crimes. I was overly religious. Used all these excuses, and I was in one trial with this one judge who I have a lot of respect for too, and I could overhear both of the attorneys talking at the bench, wanting to get rid of a juror. I want to get rid of this juror, and they were both talking about me, and they agreed. And the judge, who I knew, said, "Since you both want to get rid of him, we'll keep him."
Nice.
So
What a kindness.
yeah, well, it was just like, oh, so you think you're smart enough to get out of jury duty? You're not. And but I enjoy serving jury duty. It's just the time sometimes is very awkward for me to do it, and so
Yeah, that was always the thing, and I noticed that with jurors. It's like it's a civic duty on the one hand, but on the other hand, not all employers have the same. That's why when I had a chance as a government employee, I knew the government could basically support me while I was doing this, and that's why I was okay with being on juries. And it's fascinating. It's interesting stuff.
well,
And I'm one of those procedure people. So I'm like, was the guy in the jury room saying, I get it why everybody thinks this way, but are we following the rules?
well, since one of your favorite roles in life is to play the devil's advocate, I can't imagine having to serve on the same jury as you are.
I I, I steered every jury I've ever been on into a hung jury
Well,
because because I was a stickler. It's like, yeah, I get that, you feel this way, but what do the facts say to us? And is there doubt? And can we say with good conscience that this person gets this or doesn't get this? I've gone both ways on it. And sure enough, pretty soon people are like, well, I'm not really sure. And well, no, you got to be sure.
I wouldn't imagine you and I leading a jury, but it happens. It happens. But
No, they tried to make me foreman, and every time I'm like, no, 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 no. I want to be the devil's advocate. And the devil's advocate can't be like the leader. You always got to be like the side man.
Well, sadly, I'm always asked to do that role too. But as a foreman, I want to get it over. I want it to be fair, but let's not waste our time in this room. But
So,
one thing.
hey, so Justin, what are your growth areas? What are you looking at moving forward?
Well, professional skills, business skills. I've been picking up some new skills and putting them into use, and I find that fulfilling. I enjoy learning. That's a gift. I've always enjoyed learning things, making new discoveries. So that's focusing, and that would be the other. Now that we're getting older, trying to be more efficient with focus. Not stopping to
Nice.
pick up every shiny rock I see. Stay focused on the task at hand.
Is it difficult with something like, like audio visual production, that kind of stuff, media stuff? It seems like it's always growing so quickly. Is
Well,
is is it hard to surf that wave?
well, it can be. It doesn't mean that I found a comfort level in what I do, with the tools that I use. I keep them up to date, and when I need to pick up skills in using what I use, I know where to go get them. I don't, I know who I can trust. I know who I can trust in tech support. Always a skill that I've had, but realize you have to speak the same language as tech support.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. If you can't describe the problem, they're not going to be able to give you a solution.
Or you need to recognize when they're just giving you the runaround.
Yeah.
Back in the day, when you were on dial up in the internet, and I'm sure a few people have no comprehension of what that was like, but you would get knocked off the internet all the time and couldn't get back on. Well, when you called tech support, this is what they told you in a nutshell. I want you to go get a drink in the refrigerator. I want you to turn around 10 times. I want you to pat your head, rub your stomach. Have you done all that? Well, get yourself another drink. Okay, try it now. All that was to buy time because there were too
Yeah.
many people on the system. So computer tech support learned that they didn't have to be truthful to you. They just had to patronize you.
They just had to patronize you, and the problem would solve it.
Yeah, the problem would solve itself. And in some of the more technical server administrations things that we do now, I know when I'm being patronized, and that helps. So typically, tier one, tier two tech support, which I'm capable of doing, they bump me up to the real talent. And the real talent, it's amazing what they know. They're very hard to talk to because they don't speak a language that any human being speaks, except upper tier technical support for computers and servers and things like that.
Yeah. So it sounds like almost we could make a case uh, that some of the people, some of our younger peers who are adept at kind of the electronic digital world, may want to look back at some of the OG stuff and say maybe there's some OG stuff that I need to pick up that might help me. I mean, realistically, I don't see any like I said, I don't see any like opening bell apocalypse. I see probably a long, slow decline of civilization if you're going to get that. But so maybe someday some of those OG stuff may come in handy.
Well,
Um, but it can also be hobbies in the meantime.
well, absolutely. But what skill would here's a skill I would suggest that the younger generations try and hone, and it's communication. Because I think they've lost the ability to communicate and communicate with the audience that they're trying to talk to. I recognize that they're good at communicating to their choir, so to speak, to those of like minds.
Yeah,
But
in the silo.
yeah, in the silo. But I think they need to broaden those skills and put their smartphones down for a bit and learn how to communicate because that communication is what's going to save them.
I put my smartphone down and I get a notification from my smartphone telling me that I put it down and that's not good.
Yeah, I know.
Like the flash is red.
Exactly. I almost cry when my smartphone at the end of the week tells me how many hours I was on it.
Yeah, that one's kind of that one's actually gotten a lot better since I retired. Thank goodness. but but I took a couple of weeks off of walking. I kind of like the holidays, and I'm just going to chill a little bit. And so I really wasn't pushing it like I was before. And and every time that we've noticed a new trend in your walking habits, I'm like, stop. I know I know I've got a new trend. Or the commercial now, they've got a commercial where, hey, wouldn't it be easier to keep your New Year's resolutions if you had some support? And the phone's yelling at you. You're almost at your goal. And I'm like, oh my goodness. If somebody nags me, I like throw out the anchor. I'm like, no, I'm not going to do it
Well,
just because you want it done. It's like, that's not a good reason.
well, that's how we teach people not to nag us. But, look at today's car. OnStar, you've been in an accident. Do you need help? Are you okay?
Right.
I mean, that's just embarrassing.
I'm keep waiting for my kids to buy me the keychain that I've fallen and I can't get up.
Well, it
And
can be.
you know what they bought me instead? They bought me a bookcase that converts to a coffin.
Well, how handy is that?
Right? It's like IKEA, so it's not that hard to put together. The trick is knowing when to do the conversion, right? I mean, it's
Well,
like,
you
well, I think I got a couple days here. I better get going.
better get the books down, start to build the coffin.
Right. Now, I'll add to your communication thing because I think that's an important thing. But I think to me, there's a seed before that, and it's something that sometimes people, if I ask a room full of people, is empathy inherent or is it a skill that can be learned? A lot of people will say, well, no, it's just something you either got it or you don't. And I'll go back to something like like Michael Jordan. It's like, well, did Michael Jordan have it? Was he destined to be Michael Jordan? And they'll say, well, yeah, dude, he was obviously going to be the greatest of all time. And I said, do you realize how many hours he practiced to be that person? He didn't, he was born with a certain potentiality, but then he was so competitive and he worked so hard to develop his skill set. And that's the same thing with empathy. So it's like, yeah, some people are better at reading the room. Some people are better at sitting across from you and saying, you're just not quite right today. Are you having a bad day? Some people are better at thinking, okay, this person's outside of my silo. This is why they think these things are important, and being able to kind of communicate across that gulf. But it is something that with commitment, with a desire, well, I don't care why they're different than me, or I don't even notice that they're different than me. I was kind of pointing out the other day that the difference between an abuser and a sadist is actually aware that they're doing harm and they're enjoying it. Or many
Right.
times an abuser is so stuck into their own heads that they're not even aware that they're creating all this collateral damage.
No, you're exactly right. And yeah, I do. I think my levels of empathy have increased over the course of years, and that's because I've developed a broader perspective.
Yeah, I think that's one of those self-reliant things too, because ultimately in the information age, we are we can be super dependent upon silos, or we can be super dependent on external sources of information. And if we hook, line, and sinker that, then we've been trolled.
Yeah, no,
You know.
exactly. Well, and sadly, we live in a society now that's making a tremendous amount of money trying to divide us.
Oh yeah, yeah, absolutely. Is coin to be there's coin of the realm to be generated
And
and not only off of dividing us, but off of the energy of our angst.
yes,
So feed me some nonsense. I'll get really excited about it, and then I'll use your platform to go ahead and spew stuff all over the place and get everybody else excited. And now everybody's using your platform off of one piece of nonsense.
well, it's just a big hurdle we have to overcome, and I don't know that they necessarily. Well, they did. They needed to overcome racism or try and, temper racism. Let's not assume that we've overcome it, but I don't believe it's as bad as it used to be. And because I think a lot of people have broadened their perspectives.
And I would have to, I don't know as well because I'm not a target. So ultimately, I would trust the perceptions of the people who are more traditionally subject to being treated with racist attitudes. Because I'm kind of I'm a guy, so I don't have to worry about being a chick. I'm white, so I don't have to worry about being, black or brown. And so ultimately, I would have to check in with them, and that's part of my empathy is I could kind of look at the room and say, well, it seems better, but then I'd have to roll in, to somebody who's transsexual and say, hey, how is your community feeling about how people are accepting you for who you are, and listen to that instead of just kind of judging it.
Well,
That's
recently,
kind of my critical thinking path.
well, recently we haven't had to ask them because they've been busy demanding how we treat them.
Or hiding. I mean, because look at the legislation. The legislation isn't pro; it's contra.
Right, right,
And so
and
and it's
perspectives, and
funny, and
all
it's
perspectives are all
parenthetically. I
good.
mean,
Yeah, but perspective, so many different
this is a
perspectives.
rabbit hole.
Right.
But ultimately, you're only talking about 1% of the population who doesn't really do anything to anybody else. And to me, that just becomes another target to divide people.
Okay. 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 Makes sense. So, why don't you give us some skills we should work on to broaden our perspectives and become more self-reliant? And it's interesting how all these things are very interrelated.
Oh yeah. And I think it's helped. This has been. Thank you, Justin, for kind of weighing this out with me because, like I said, I've been really kind of just in my head, kind of like this seems important. What do we need to do? And so I think honestly, if I was a younger person, I would be like, well, how about woodland skills? Could I survive a night in the forest? Could I survive a week in the forest? Maybe that's something I need to learn and develop. And maybe it's not for critical necessity. Maybe it's just to have that in my back pocket and say, wow, I am closer to nature now that I feel like I'm not going to be victimized by, losing my car keys on a hike and my phone, right? Or not having reception. So I think for younger people, maybe it is woodworking, maybe it is electricity, maybe it is cooking skills, and because these are all things that have these really deep traditions in humanity. And I think part of learning this skill is reconnecting to almost to our ancestors, because our ancestors had to have this stuff to survive, and maybe we don't need it critically to survive. Let's knock on wood that we don't have a situation where we're absolutely going to have these or it's going to go bad. But it's something that they could develop, and it could be a part of their deeper sense of humanity, more connected to their roots, more practical skills. Their friends are going to love them. It's like having your friend with a pickup truck. I was reading a study, and pickup trucks are rarely used now for the things that when I had a pickup truck, I was booked. I was like,
Right.
hey, dude, I got a sofa. I need to get it across town. What are you doing on Saturday? So I was constantly, being tapped on the shoulder to help people by hauling stuff. I was using it for trucky kind of things, and I was reading the statistics, and it's like 10% of trucks actually haul anything in any given week.
Well,
And it's like, well, there's your pickup truck.
when I was younger and had a pickup truck, it had a very snug camper shell on it, and if you wanted to borrow it, I would say you're welcome to borrow it, but you're going to have to take the camper shell off, and you're going to have to put the camper shell back on when you're done with it. And you might be surprised people didn't want to borrow it anymore, but
No, because they needed good seals on those camper shells.
yeah, yeah, but The one thing I would suggest if you're of the younger generation and you feel a little overwhelmed with what the greatest generation might have accomplished, spend some time with your grandparents if you have them, and communicate with them. Have them tell you, have them share their experience.
Ask them
Yeah,
what. Hey, what do you think I probably need to pick up?
no, absolutely. And if your grandparents aren't available, consider a nursing home because there's a lot of people in those nursing homes that have those skills that are very sharp and would enjoy your company.
It occurs to me another thing that like pickup trucks that aren't used to be pickup trucks anymore. Um, Reading books.
Yeah.
The number of people who actually read a book in any given year is like very low. Maybe that's a skill people need to kind of revisit. There's so much video entertainment nowadays, digital entertainment, that books are rapidly becoming passe, and that may or may not be good for your brain.
Well, you and I both enjoy reading books.
My oldest kid got me 5 different thick books for Christmas.
Thick books. You sound like a 9-year-old. These are thick. What do you expect me to do?
Chapter
Read
books.
them?
I'm reading chapter books now. I've come a long way.
Well, it has. And I do think there's hope. And, there's a lot of promise. We may not understand all the aspects of being, those in the younger generation, but there's a lot of promise. And there's really a lot on the table for them to accomplish if they get after it.
What about the OGs? What do you think they need to pick up? How do you think they might goal orient themselves in terms of picking up skills?
Well, I would say the first thing, and you can probably put me in that category, is be more empathetic. And, you know, if we're asking other groups to communicate with us, we need to learn how to communicate with them. We need to find that common ground. Maybe that would be a wonderful goal for us all.
You would have thought that would have just been part of the download of wisdom of age, but it's not.
No,
There's this
not
whole
for all.
get off of my yard vibe too.
Well, not for all, but for some, I've certainly become more understanding and empathetic than when I was younger. You and I don't agree on a lot of things, but we can certainly talk about all of those things.
Oh yeah, absolutely, and that's one of the reasons I really love the dog park. To be honest, is because there are so many different frames of reference that you realize that your frame of reference isn't the frame of reference; it's a frame of
Oh,
reference.
you're exactly right. And all of it helps you build a better database and, be open to it and be open to that information. Don't shut down to it. Try not to hate. Because there's nothing good comes from hate. Absolutely nothing good. And and I will, and I didn't have any resolutions, but I will try and enhance my empathy for others, which I lose sight of from time to time.
Yeah, it isn't an automatic, is it?
No, no, it's not. And it's the easiest path is to group people and label them and be done with them, but that's just a moronic approach to life.
Yeah. No, a true story. I was, up on New Year's Eve listening to the percussive blasts going off,
The illegal
and
blast.
well, that too, that are not being enforced.
Right.
So there's that. But to me, it's like nothing is goofier than to spend a lot of money on. I mean, you're detonating things that don't even have an impact. They just make noise, and then the money's gone. And I just, to me it can't get, and my dogs aren't fireworks sensitive, fortunately, but you're scaring your own dogs. It's like you're waking up the old people in the neighborhood who don't want to be up at 1 o'clock in the morning,
Right.
or people who need to be at work the next day, and you're doing all this stuff just completely non-consensually. It's not like you sent out a memo to everybody in the neighborhood saying, "Hey, I'm thinking about having some fireworks. How do you feel? Is this going to disrupt your lives any?" You know, um, and so I'm up listening to this thing, and I'm like, you know what? Yeah, I'm feeling it. But maybe I do things in my life that are kind of selfish that way. And
Well,
so pretty soon I'm starting to think, there are times probably when I'm acting out of my ego, out of my own perceived needs and out of whatever, and I'm really, kind of losing my grace with the universe because I'm being thoughtless. And
right.
maybe there's some ways that I can adjust my behaviors and be more aware of when I'm, doing something that is like setting off fireworks, insensitive to other people.
Well, if you and I gathered some of those suspects and put them in a room and had a dialogue with them, they would look at you and I and say, "You guys get together once a week and talk for an hour?"
And then it's people listen to it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, it's just different perspectives. Yeah, and we have that here, and yeah, they're not going to enforce it. They're smuggled into the country, via Mexico from China. And for some people, that is the highlight of their life, the highlight of
Yeah,
their
yeah,
year.
yeah. And I'm not going to forgive their selfishness, but I'm going to try and find mine
Yeah, well,
because I'm sure I do. Because I'm sure I've got a version of that.
we all
You
do.
know, yeah, exactly. And
And
I think that back to your point of empathy, it's like part of me taking responsibility for myself because I can't. You're right. You're right. The fireworks. It's not like me complaining about it's not going to fix it.
no, no, exactly. And just like most other things, complaints are not going to do anything about it. But trying to develop a better understanding of it or a better place to be when it's happening around you emotionally is probably a good thing.
Wait, I don't get the buzz kill other people's joy.
Oh, well, no, only in strange comments on social media, but that's another thing.
You should see me in a theme park, man. It took like 20 years for me to be able to be in a theme park without everybody getting mad at me.
Well, I was fortunate as a child. I was drugged to Disneyland, in the '60s, and remembered it was just a wait. It was hurry up and wait, hurry up and wait, and I
Yeah,
can't.
there's the whole waiting in line thing. Yeah, I've got issues. But then there's the whole, you're spending all this money for these momentary thrills. It's all gone. You just paid $9 for a turkey leg. You know, everything about theme parks just kind of spins me, and I had to learn how to let people enjoy it. And that was a growth step for me, and I'm better at it now. Sometimes I have to bite my tongue, sometimes I have to avert my eyes, but mostly I can let people. And when I was a kid, we had Cedar Point in Sandusky, Ohio, and it was like a 3 hour drive, and our parents would take us there and just turn us loose.
Right.
Check in 2 hours, and so me and my friends, we would look for cute girls and ride the roller coasters they were riding, over and over and over again. That's how we spent our time there. So yeah, thrill seeking's a thing, and yeah, younger people enjoy it probably more than the elders. But I had to learn how to, once I became an adult and had to pay bills. It's like I was like, really, you're going to spend money in a theme park?
Well, and that's why there's a beauty of a county fair because there's so many things for so many different people. Whether it's the rides, whether it's the exhibits, whether it's the animals, but there's almost something there for everybody. If
You just
if
walk
you
around
look,
and people watch.
well, there's also that. But like the photography exhibits, and I'm sure there's things now you enjoy at the fair.
Yeah, I've got my wife and I have our fair route down. It's like, so there's some things she likes to see. There's some things I like to see. I don't have any kids anymore, so I'm not right. I'm not like packing myself into those tight little rides and trying to ride through those because I was the designated take the kid on the ride guy.
Right, right, right. Well, right. And I'll share my last comment. I'll share one of my favorite experiences here in a ag community, going to the county fair, and an acquaintance of mine was I was checking out the poultry exhibits because I used to raise chickens as a child and had an egg business as a child. And I always enjoyed the poultry exhibits, so I'm going through. Casual acquaintance of mine, daughter was exhibiting her chickens in a coop, and part of her task was to explain people about her chickens. And I was just so fascinated by her passion of telling me about her chickens. And I think I stood there and let her talk to me for about 5 minutes. And when I walked away, I said, that was so cool. And that's what this is all about.
Oh, giving her a chance just to feel listened to.
Right. Well, with somebody that has a similar passion for chickens. So it was a remarkable moment, and most people would never have that happen to them at the county fair, but they could have something else, judging eating contests, all kinds of things.
So people skills.
Yeah.
Us OGs need to work on our people skills.
Yes, absolutely. Everybody, all the time. Let's
And we
do
should
it.
be good. I'll say this for OGs, for that generation, our generation. We should be good models. We've got a responsibility to kind of set the bar.
I agree, Scott, and I think you and I try and do that.
I put effort into that whenever I can. Whenever I get out of my own skin and realize that we don't need another grouchy man in the world. There's plenty of those.
Well, exactly, and we're blessed because we have our wives to help keep us in our places.
Oh yeah, yeah, absolutely. Partnership's a good thing for
Yeah,
me.
yeah,
And
absolutely. All right, Scott. I think this was certainly interesting. I hope people find it that way. So why don't we get out of here?
let's do that.
All right, everybody. It's been Justin Case and Scott bringing you American Consciousness. Thanks for joining us. Remember, additional information and links provided in this video is read more. Today is the day to subscribe to this channel. Please learn more about Scott when time permits.